Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Everquest Old School. And on tonight's episode, we are going to be playing over in Unrest. In fact, we're in the fireplace room again. Finally, we've gotten up into this room, and we are level 22, so not too bad. You can kind of get up here at level 21, maybe even level 20, depending on what class you're playing. As a cleric, you can often get into groups that you don't necessarily can get into as a tank, because as a tank you kind of want. Hold on a second, let me see what they're saying here. 2 AC, 5 charisma. That's actually kind of a nice earring right there. I could see it if the FD split it. Okay, so he's having a hard time actually pulling over here. Our monk is, anyways. He's never pulled in this area, and that's one of those things as a tank that if you're unfamiliar with a certain area, of course you're going to let people know that, but you do have to go through that learning curve of finding out how to pull a certain room and what are the do's and don'ts. And of course, the cleric kind of has to pick up the slack, or the healer has to pick up the slack a little bit when you're learning, because you're going to take more damage. In fact, hold on a second, guys. I'm about to die here. No, get it off of me. Let me move it a little bit. There we go. And that was just me healing a little bit too much. I didn't really have a choice in that, they were taking hits and they have to get heals, but burn the hag. There we go. Now, I will talk a little bit about what spells to use and how often to use them in this video, because I did have a viewer request that, and I've talked about that many, many times before in other videos, but, it's a good subject to talk about. And it changes as you progress through the game as a cleric. So at a lower level, you will be healing completely different than you will be at a higher level. And one of the huge game changers for a cleric is complete heal. And so that will greatly change, how you play your class and the aggro you get from healing, which can be a huge, huge issue at lower levels. At a lower level, when you heal basically the whole fight, and you do it because your spell, for one, sucks pretty bad, and two, if you don't, the tank is probably going to die. Hold on a second. Festering Cloak. Ooh, that's kind of nice. 10 HP, 10 mana. Severe versus, severe resist versus disease and poison, and AC is 5. What are these? I don't know what that's for. Gossamer Leggings, AC 5. That's not bad. And of course the earrings, so that's kind of cool. They drop some pretty nice stuff up here. And of course they drop bronze as well, so if you're looking for that, this is a good zone, a good group to be in. If you're down up in the main room, not down up, but if you're down in the main room, then you won't get as much bronze, unless of course your tank is pulling from over here as well. Let me see what they're saying. Standing outside the door of the bar. Okay, just making sure they don't need me for anything. And I got the paladin tossing me a heal. Now, normally I will not waste power on myself to heal me unless I'm really low, or unless I know that they're having a hard time keeping aggro with the mobs that they're pulling. Because for the most part, as a cleric, you're just going to be sitting down pretty much the whole fight, or the whole time you're in a group, and so you have plenty of time for your life to go up naturally. And so that's why I tend not to waste power on myself, because it's better used on a tank or even a caster if they're about to die, which I don't really like to heal casters either, because again, it is such a waste of power, to be honest, because they take hits so easily. And so my heal spells will do a certain amount of healing, period, no matter who they are. But you also have to take into account, though, that a tank has higher AC, which means he will take the hits but get hit for far less than, say, a caster will. So in the amount of time that a caster will take, 3 bubbles of health, sometimes that's only like 1 hit. Whereas if that same hit went towards the tank, he'd take, maybe 10 or 15 points of damage, maybe a couple hundred, depending on the level and, how much, hit points he has and things of that sort. But it's really not going to be 3 bubbles. It's going to be, a very, very small amount of 1 bubble that he takes on his damage-wise. But when I heal him, he still gets healed for, say, the 5,000 points or 10,000 points of healing, and so it's more efficient to use it on that guy, the tank, than anybody else. But if the caster's gonna die, you have to heal him. There's no round. There's nothing that you can do about that. If you don't, then you're gonna be a pretty horrible cleric. People aren't gonna want to group with you, and you got to remember, even though the caster doesn't take the hits nearly as well as tanks do, for the most part, they're the ones who are doing all the damage. So the caster, if he dies, your group will either not be able to kill the creature at all because you're just not doing enough damage, or two, not be able to kill him as quickly, and therefore you're still going to be using more of your power in the long run because now the fight goes on longer and the tank gets hit for more damage over that duration. So everybody plays a role. I just don't like wasting heals on casters. My personal preference, if I can avoid it, because again, casters are kind of like clerics. They will sit there and allow their own health to regenerate over the course of 5-10 minutes or something like that. And as long as they're not attacking too much, they're not picking up too much aggro, chances are they won't get attacked more than maybe 1 or 2 times the entire time they're in a group. Of course, you do have to have a decent tank. If the tank is not keeping the taunt, if he's not doing that over and over and over again, or if you just happen to not have a tank with the taunt ability, which is possible. You could have a bard tanking for you, and I can't believe I called a bard a tank, but it does happen. That's sometimes just what you have, and we just lost our paladin too, so that sucks. She was the one that was tossing me a heal a minute ago, so I guess it's a good thing that she did that before she left. Let me toss a heal on this guy. Now, I haven't gotten into timing-wise on when you should heal and when you shouldn't heal just yet. Again, that really is determined by your level and the healing spells you have available. So for mine, I have the spell Healing, which is my highest level heal spell at the moment at level 22. I also have Light Healing, which is my second highest level heal spell. And then I have Minor Healing, which is my lowest heal spell that I have equipped at the moment. I think I have 2 other heal spells that are lower than that. And you can probably get away with just having 2 heal spells. But I am used to playing as a high-level cleric, and at a higher level, you will have Complete Heal, and then you will have a spell like Superior Healing, which uses far more power than Complete Heal, but it casts faster. Complete Heal takes 10 seconds. I believe Superior Heal is something like 6 seconds. It might actually be 5, but obviously you're thinking, oh, 4 seconds, is that really that big of a deal? Well, yeah, it can be. In a fight where the tank is, he just pulled to the room and you weren't able to start casting that Complete Heal in time, he's about to die. You need a very, very quick spell to cast on him, but yet still very powerful. You can use Superior Healing. You're going to use more power for that spell, and you're going to not get as much healing from it. So it's not really cost efficient in that regards. But because it's faster and it still does a decent amount of healing, that's the one you're going to want to use. But because it's such a powerful spell and not very cost efficient, when your casters get hit, you're not going to want to use that one. It's going to be too much healing for the few hit points that casters have. And so you want a third spell that does, a little bit less healing, because again, the casters don't have the hit points to take anything close to Superior Healing. Unless they're down to like 20%, then you could possibly use a Superior Heal on them and get them all the way back up to full. But even if that was the case, you could just use Complete Heal and be done with it, because that would use less power than Superior Healing to boot. So again, you would pretty much never use Superior Healing on the caster unless he was about to die and you just couldn't get Complete Heal off in time, which is a possibility because casters drop in life really, really quickly when they're getting hit. And, it's just, I don't remember very often that I could time it for 10 seconds for a caster to survive. If the caster is getting hit, he won't even last 10 seconds from full life to 0. So again, you really, really have to have a spell that casts a little quicker. But I usually wouldn't use Superior Healing. I'd use something, less than that, so that I could, give him a little boost of health, and hopefully, if you had a decent tank, they could pull it off of him. But again, I'm talking about high-level healing spells here, and that doesn't really apply to what I'm doing here. But that's, just the reason I have 3 heal spells, because I'm used to that. At this level, I can use Healing, which is my highest level heal spell, on a caster, and it's really not that bad. It's actually just perfectly fine. But again, like I said, you might want to get into the habit of just having those available to you, and maybe even having or using those in situations like I've just described, so that you can be accustomed to doing it. Because it is kind of one of those things that once you get to that level, it really changes your gameplay, and that can be kind of rough for some people to go from playing one way and then completely change it overnight, especially since it takes so long to level up in this game. We're talking about playing a certain way for months on end, and then having to change that after you just got good at doing what you were doing. So, and then of course at lower levels, you have like one heal spell, and you basically have to just spam that heal spell during a fight so that you can keep the tank alive. And so you're going to get a lot more aggro that way. You're going to get hit a lot more because, again, every time you heal, you get a little bit of hate in your direction, which is why complete heal is such a game changer, because you can pretty much wait the entire fight, cast that spell, heal the tank up all the way to full life, and sit back down, and your job is done. And you may only have to do that once every 2 or 3 fights. And so you can even wait until the fight is over, then heal the tank up, let him run off and go do what he's going to do, and you just never build up any aggro whatsoever. But at lower levels, when you're using like your superior heal over and over and over again, you're going to get hit quite a bit. And so timing is one of those things that you really, really have to learn. We filled everything. Okay, so they've killed everything so far. But right now, you have to make the decision when the tank comes in. Do you heal him, and how soon? And that greatly depends on what his life is and how fast it's dropping. If he pulls 5 or 6 mobs with him, and his life is at 40% when he enters the door, and his life is dropping like 10% every 2 or 3 seconds, you don't really have a choice other than to heal him, because if the tank dies, all those mobs are going to scatter. And they're going to scatter onto whoever has the most aggro besides that tank. And chances are it's going to be a caster, because casters are the ones doing the damage, unless, of course, you have a rogue or something like that. And then they're the ones who's going to get hit by all those mobs. And they're not going to survive for more than a couple seconds, if that. And chances are, from my experience, what I've seen is once the tank goes down, everybody else goes down within seconds, like dominoes. The creatures move in a herd towards one guy. Boom, 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 he's dead. Boom, boom, boom to the next guy, he's dead. And it's like one hit, and then they're all dead. And so you got to keep the tank alive, unless, of course, you have a backup tank. And then, of course, you can make the decision, do I let the main tank die so I don't pull aggro? Because, again, if you die, there's a good chance that nobody else will survive the fight either. Because without a healer there to constantly feed power, or not power, but life to the people getting hit, with 5 mobs, it's going to be pretty sticky whether anybody can survive that. And if they do, it doesn't really matter, because now the healer's dead. And if you're really, really far into a zone, they need the healer there. And just because they survive one fight doesn't mean they're going to survive the next fight. And so everybody will either have to gate out or teleport out, because there's no way to bring that cleric back other than to walk him back down to the group. If anybody else in the group dies, the cleric can always res and revive them, and so they can get back rather easy. But if the healer dies, that definitely puts a crink in things, and it usually, well, maybe not in the group, depending on how dedicated the people are to staying there, but it definitely stops the groups in its tracks. And so you don't want to die either, but you don't want the tank to die. And if he has 5 guys on him, if you heal right off the bat, you're going to get all that aggro for the most part, especially off of the other 4. You may be able to have one mob that the tank is actually attacking stay on himself, but the other 4 were just body pulls, basically, or face pulls, depending on how you want to use the terminology that I've heard other people use. And so the only aggro that he has on those creatures is the fact that he was in the vicinity first. But the moment you do anything to him, you automatically create more, aggression towards you than he has towards it. And that definitely will affect you when they all come over there to beat on you. Now, as a cleric versus other healers, you do have plate armor, which means you can take hits a little bit better than other classes, but not really. From what I've seen, even though you're wearing the same armor or pretty close to the same AC as the tank is, you're still not going to take hits nearly as well as he is. So don't count on that to really save your life. You're going to get a few extra seconds than, say, a shaman who's wearing like leather, or I think actually shamans can wear chain, where druids can only wear leather. So yeah, they don't take hits very well, and of course they don't have as efficient mana spells for healing as clerics do. Clerics, of course, are pure healers, and so therefore they get spells that are tailored towards that. Where druids get some buffs that clerics don't have, and they get teleport, so they have their own things that make up for that loss of healing power and effectiveness. But the same thing goes for shamans. Shamans get a whole bunch more buffs than clerics do. They get a whole bunch of dots and slow spells. They get a pet. I mean, they just have tons and tons of stuff that makes up for it. And so they're useful in their own right. But when you're talking about, healing-wise, pretty much the best class you can have is a cleric for that. And I'm pretty low on power here. So let me tell them I'm down to 10%. But of course, you can always mitigate that aggro quite a bit depending on the classes in your group at the time. So if you have an enchanter, then you may not have to worry too much about the creatures coming over there and hitting you, because what enchanters will do at higher levels is they will area effect stun all the creatures, and then they will area effect mez the creatures, and then one by one go in there and single mez it, because the area effect spell for their mez does not last nearly as long as their single spell one does. And so they will go through and do that on large fights. And so therefore you are able to kind of heal right off the bat, and really, I should have healed the bard, not the tank. Let me see, can I get one more in there? I think I can before I'm out of power. There we go. Now I usually try to save at least one heal spell, or enough power for one heal spell as reserve. And I usually won't let the group know that I have at least that much left, so that if something happens that we're not expecting, if I tell them I'm at 10% and they're like, oh, okay, that's enough power for me to go pull one creature. Well, at higher levels, when I have complete heal, yeah, that might be enough for you to go to start one attack. But what happens if the room spawns while you're out, and now we have 4 or 5 creatures that we weren't planning on? Then it's not enough. But if I tell them I'm out of power when I'm at like 5% or 6%, then I have at least that much extra power than they believe I have, and if something happens, I can save them. Now, at really high levels, especially in Rage, you want to be completely honest with the group and let them know, because they're going to be keeping track of when the place is supposed to respawn, and Raids, chances are you don't have to worry about respawn. In certain zones, like the respawn is so ridiculously long that you'll be long gone, done with the entire raid after 7 or 8 hours camping there before anything is even likely to respawn again for you. So you don't really have to worry about that. Let them worry about it. But in pickup groups, pugs for short, you kind of want to give yourself a little leeway, because you don't know the skill level of the people that you're hunting with. And that could be either incredibly good or incredibly bad. And for the most part, I hate to say it, but incredibly bad is usually what I came to expect from pickup groups back in the day. Right now, coming back to the game after this long, what I have found is pickup groups are dramatically better than what they used to be. And I think the reason behind that is most of the people playing are people who played previously when the game first came out. And so they know a little bit of what they're doing. They may be relearning things, or learning things for the first time and going through zones that they never went to, or playing a class that they never went to. But having that basic understanding of, just how mobs work and how certain classes work, and knowing a little bit about the game allows you to really, figure out, give up 15 HP for 5 more mana, good. I don't know about that. It depends on the class. If you're not a tank, I would say, yeah, I mean, the more power as a cleric is probably better for me than hit points, because, hit points really doesn't do me any good 99% of the time if I'm doing my job right. If you're doing your job excellent, then 100% of the time, hit points isn't going to do you any good, because you're not supposed to ever take any hits. Unless, of course, you're in a high-level zone where you might be getting hit with area effect spells and things of that sort. 15 HP plus 15 mana, 2 AC, that's not bad. Versus the Ivory Bracelet. No. No, see that he worded it differently. I thought he was just getting an extra. He had to choose between 15 HP or 5 mana. But because he's getting 15 HP and 15 mana versus just 20 mana, I would probably just forgo the extra 5 mana and go with the extra 15 HP. Even though you won't need it that often, it's not really that big of an increase. Plus, you get 2 extra AC versus just 3 agility, and he's not going to need agility. Yeah, so I'd stick with the one he already has. Let's see, I rarely give up HP for anything. As a tank, that's completely true, but as a healer, not so much. And of course, it really depends on the healer type. Like shamans have the ability to cannibalize themselves for power, and so HP kind of actually translates into more power for them. And so the choice between those two would become a little bit harder. Druids, not really a thing because they don't do anything with their HP as far as power goes, and they also have a spell at higher levels that I think it's called Chloroplast. Then they might have some at lower levels that's a different name, but it's the same spell that allows them to regenerate their health a little faster. How's power? I am at 70%. There we go. Let them go out and get some more stuff. I should have told them when I was about 40% and they could have went out, but they were going through my power pretty quickly, so having a little bit extra will not hurt us that bad. But again, Chloroplast is an amazing spell to have in a group. I love having a druid in my group, not only for the fact that you can get Spirit of the Wolf in case something goes wrong, and of course Spirit of the Wolf only works in zones that are considered outside zones, but what you can do, and what a lot of people will do if you're close to an entrance, is zone out of the dungeon, put on Spirit of the Wolf, have the druid cast it on you, and zone back in, and then you have Spirit of the Wolf for another 35-40 minutes before it has to be recast again. Now if you're really, really far down into a dungeon and there's no way you're going to get out and back in very easily, then that's not really an option, and of course that spell just can't be used there to the effectiveness that it can be in other zones. But having Chloroplast on the people in your group, if you look at my group members right here, this guy's at 87%. Then I have the Bard, who's at 89%, and I have I think this is the Monk at 97%. If you had Chloroplast on each one of them, I wouldn't have to heal them. In fact, they could go through this entire fight, and chances are the Bard would be closer to full life than when he started the fight, even though he was getting hit during the fight. And that's how good Chloroplast is. And it just saves me power in the long run because I don't have to do these little small heals on these guys. And that allows me not only to save the power on the spell, but to meta a little bit longer without having to stand up. Wow, he just took a nice little chunk on the hits right there. I just healed him up and now he's already back down again. So, and of course you have to decide, do you heal him up to full life before he goes out? The answer is almost, resounding yes, if he is the pooler. The last thing you ever want is the pooler to leave the room that you're in at a low life, because that's going to put you in a very bad position when he enters after pooling. Because he's going to take a few hits. He may take quite a few hits depending on the creatures he's pooling. Some of the creatures stun, some of them blind, and that's pretty rough for a tank to make his way back to a room, not be able to see anything. Now, I've done it before in zones where you're just so familiar with the area that even once you're blind, you have a really good chance of getting back. But there's other areas where you're pulling from so far away, even if you're incredibly familiar with it, the chances of you making it back blind the whole way is pretty slim, especially if there's doors and traps and a lot of twists and turns around corners and things of that sort. So you always want to make sure, no matter what class you're playing, but especially as a healer or an enchanter or a puller, that you have a hot button down over here in one of your numbers that allows you to hit the key, like hit number 6 or hit number 7 on your keyboard, that will allow the group to have a little message saying, I'm blind. As a tank, that's pretty important because you usually have at least one other person in your group that's capable of pulling the creature if they absolutely have to. And so bards will fall into that category. They can run out of the room and try to help out the tank, pull the creature off of him while he's in the corridor, and get it back to the group and sit there and tank it for a few seconds until blind wears off. The cleric could always leave the room and run out there and try to cure blindness off of the tank as quick as possible so he can get it back to the group as well. There's a lot of different things you can do. At least it lets the group know that you're getting hit, and the reason you're taking damage and not bringing it back to the group is because you can't see what you're doing. Or the reason you're not mezzing the mobs is because you can't see anything. And, they understand that because in this game, the programmers, I don't know if they had like a sixth sense of humor or what, but when you're blinded, for those of you who haven't seen some of my earlier videos over in like Greater Fadar fighting the orcs and things of that sort, when you're blinded, the screen goes black, like the whole screen. It's not like, oh, okay, I'm still playing the game and I can see like the hot bars and things, or I can still see the chat and stuff like that. No, no, no. The whole thing goes black like your monitor just died. And when the game first came out, before people realized that what was going on, you would be like, oh crap, my monitor went out. And people would actually like reboot their computers and unplug their monitors and plug them back in, thinking that, oh, maybe there's a loose wire or something, because it usually lasted for about 45 seconds to a minute. Just long enough for you to think that, oh, the problem's on your side. Because you could still hear sound coming out and you were getting hit, and you're like, oh crap, what's wrong with my computer? And then it would come back, and then you'd realize, oh, okay, the spell, blinded me, that sucked, right? But until then, before you realize that, it was just a pain in the butt big time. And even once you realized it's still a pain in the butt, you just don't have that constant nagging sensation like, oh, okay, what am I doing wrong? And you want opal earring, charisma +5. Nah, I mean, I don't really. I could use it because it's nice. Oh crap, we got pop. Let me go ahead and heal up right here. I need to heal the bard because he's pretty low. And I didn't have to heal him. He's not gonna die if I don't. So I could wait for the fight to be over. But again, you just never know what's going to happen. If another mob comes in here and starts hitting him, he could drop dramatically really quickly like he is just right now because another mob did spawn. And if I hadn't healed him when I did, he may have died before I could. Sometimes they take so much damage that even healing them non-stop, you can't keep up with it. And so unless you have that extra little leeway, the fact that he's a little bit higher level, or not a little bit higher level, a little bit higher on his health when he's taking those hits, giving you that extra few seconds for him to survive, for the people in your group to kill one of the mobs or stun him or root him so he can back up and take a little bit extra time to heal up and not die, then chances are you're going to lose somebody. So you don't want them to get too low. My rule of thumbs is if they're at 50%, they deserve at least one heal, depending on their class. If they're a caster, one heal at 50%, chances are we'll heal them pretty close to full life. And so I may wait a little bit longer. I may let them go down to like 45 or 42% before I toss them a heal. But for a tank, if they're at 42 or 40%, that's incredibly low. In fact, I should have healed them a long time before that at this level. Again, once you get complete heal, I've had it go down where my tanks, some of them hated it and some of them found it really exciting, and some of them didn't even look at their health really, to be honest, that often. But at higher levels, when I had complete heal, I would let them go down to like 2 or 3% before I healed them, because again, it is a complete heal. And so no matter how many hit points he has, it's going to heal him all the way up. I think later on they changed it so that complete heal only did like 10,000 hit points or something like that, and it was possible to get more than 10,000 hit points. So it wouldn't heal them completely up, but it was pretty close even at that stage where you could have more than 10,000 hit points, because nobody went dramatically beyond that. It was like, I think I remember some people having like 11 or 11.5 thousand hit points, and that's still going to be, if you heal them at like 2%, it's still going to get them up to like 92% or something like that. So pretty close to a complete heal almost all the time. But at this stage in the game, I think it is just, de facto, 1% all the way up to 100% no matter who you're healing. And so I would try to let it get as low as possible and then heal them. Of course, that really, really depends on the fight. and if the damage he was taking was steady. Sometimes there are certain fights where the creature doesn't attack very often, but when he does, it takes off like 5, 6, 7% of his life every time it attacks, and then it will take another 5, 6 seconds before he does it again. That's very, very hard to anticipate, especially considering people are slowing him and they're stunning him, so you can't really you know rely on the fact that he's going to be taking that much damage in a couple of seconds, and so it's very hard to time that. And in fights like that, I didn't really want to risk that he could get a certain boost of damage all of a sudden and just die on me. And so I wouldn't really risk it. I would just go ahead and kill the creature, or not kill the creature, but heal him as much as possible before he died and before they kill the creature. Whereas other times, like I said, where he'd be taking that steady hit and steady damage, I would wait as long as possible and risk it a little bit more, because I found that to be exciting. Because as a cleric, you just stand up, you heal, you sit back down, you stand up, you heal, you sit back down. Not really that exciting as a cleric. And so anything I could do at times to make it a little bit more exciting, make it a little bit more challenging, I try to. And it's a good idea to get in the habit of doing that a little bit, because whereas in a group you can kind of use that as a sense of excitement, a sense of enjoyment, a sense of challenge. In a raid, chances are that's going to be the norm. Like you're gonna be healing people with complete heal, very, very close to being dead. And the reason you're doing that is because those creatures just hit so hard. So if you get really panicky and you're like, oh no, he's at 10%, he's gonna die, and you're like, oh, this is too stressful. You might not want to go on too many raids, because that's pretty much going to be the norm if you're in the first group. First group is always, I don't really want to say the best people, because it's not really always the best, but it's the strongest. So you have the tank with the most hit points, and you have the puller who's the most aware and knows the area the most, and of course all those people have to work really well together. And so you may have a cleric who's exceptional at healing, and he's just on the ball all the time, but he doesn't really work very well, he doesn't really fit very well with the personalities in that group, and so therefore he may not be in the first group. He may be in the backup group, who actually still heals the main tank, because a lot of the time you will have one guy who pretty much takes all the damage in the raid, unless of course there's area effects going off, and that's why you have a healer in each one of the groups to kind of take care of that. But one guy is taking all the hits, so what you will have is all the clerics will have, or all the healers will have, a hotkey to auto-target that guy. And in this game, the encounters are not locked, so anybody in an area can heal anybody at any given time. They can help out. And so when he's taking hits, what's going on here? Fine Steel Rapier. Okay. I don't really want that, but okay, I'll take it. I don't know what that's for. Nope, he's too far away for me to heal. I don't really like letting him go out at 70%. That's way too low for a tank, because again, if he takes, 20% damage on the way in, which is not unheard of on a pool, 20%. Sometimes you take 20 or 30 or 40% on a pool, then he's going to be really low, and he's going to force me to have to heal him right off the bat, like I just did right there. And if the tank hadn't just run up there and started taunting him and hitting him right there, chances are, he would have run over and started attacking me. And I think we're going to go ahead and call the episode here, guys, because I don't want to make these episodes too long. I do want to thank you guys for watching. If you do enjoy these videos, please hit that like button, subscribe. Definitely helps grow my channel, and I greatly appreciate it. And feel free to leave comments down below. I would love to hear your take on healing and how you did it back in the day, and if you agree with the way I do it. It is a little different for every class, and it's different at different levels and the zone that you're in and the situations that you come across. So it's very, very hard for me to say this is the way you do it and that's it, and because it's not. It's very very fluid, and it changes all the time depending on the people that you're with, and classes, and the makeup, and just the skill level and things of that sort. So just a brief overview of how I heal, and the techniques that I use at the moment. And I talked a little bit more about actually at higher levels, because those are the ones that I remember the most. Because it takes you so long to level at that time, that you spend a lot more time there than you did at lower levels. But we'll go ahead and end it here, guys. Again, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.